Hello, all, and welcome to today's Bailey Glasser webinar, the very high cost of low or no motorist insurance, what you need to know to protect your family. If you have questions during today's program, please submit them to questions@baileyglasser.com. I do want to mention that if you have trouble seeing the slides, you can hover over the middle of your screen to increase the size of the slides. There's a little slider there. And with that, I'll turn it over to today's presenter, Bailey Glasser partner, Sam Herco. Sam, you want to kick this off?
Thanks. Thanks, Justin. So, my name's Sam Harco. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you being here today. We have what hopes to be a very informative presentation for you. The topic at hand is we're going to focus on uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. It may be something you know a little bit about, maybe something you've heard about, but hopefully you'll leave here today with a little bit of a better understanding as to what it is, what it does for you and your family, and potentially how much or frankly how little it might cost. So, go to the next slide. Okay, well, roadmap for today's presentation. We're going to give you an overview of auto insurance, talk about the basics of underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage, look at a few case studies that I'm familiar with, and talk about key takeaways from today's presentation, and then hopefully answer a few questions. So, the basics of auto insurance. We all have to have it. Every state requires you to have it if you operate a motor vehicle on its highways. I want to hit these pretty briefly because, like I said, these aren't the focus of the presentation today. First of all, you have liability coverage. Liability insurance provides you peace of mind that if you unfortunately cause an injury or cause a crash, that you will have insurance to pay for any losses that come from that crash. The next branch of coverage is what we call medical payments coverage. Medical payments coverage provides some limited form of healthcare coverage for yourself and or the passengers in your vehicle. Another form of coverage that typically comes along with an auto policy is what they call comprehensive coverage. Comprehensive coverage pays for damages to or repairs to your motor vehicle and or fair market value of your motor vehicle if it's damaged by reasons other than a crash. For instance, if a tree falls on your car, or if your car is hit by a rock or a tennis ball or something of that nature. The next form of coverage is collision coverage. That's simply what it sounds like. This is the coverage that pays for the repairs and or replacement of your fair market value of your car if it's involved in a crash of some sort, whether that be with another driver, whether that be, back your car into a post or into the side of a building or something like that, which, those things happen. Your collision coverage is what you look for to cover that cost. Also, now, the meat and potatoes of today's presentation, underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage. This coverage comes into play when the crash is not your fault, and we're focusing on whether or not the person, the at-fault person who caused the crash, either has some insurance to cover your losses and maybe not enough, or simply they may not have any insurance at all. And folks, just to kind of kick off the importance of this coverage, this is the coverage that protects you and your family. This is what you can go out and do on your own, take the bull by the horns and go out and protect yourself, protect your family. Typically, the instances of an uninsured motorist, it happens quite a bit. I have seen this in my practice. I've been doing this type of law for 20 years or better. I've handled car crash cases. tractor trailer cases, things of that nature. But I've seen this. The very first case I resolved as a lawyer, person that was at fault had no insurance coverage. That was back in the year 2000. Here in the year 2021, I took a call a couple of weeks ago from a couple of folks who were involved in a car crash, two spouses, and their grandchildren were in the car. They were hit by a drunk driver who had no auto insurance, and they were woefully underinsured when it came to uninsured motorist coverage. We see it a lot. It's heartbreaking. And one of the takeaways I'd like for you to have from this presentation today is why this is so important. I'm fairly passionate about it. I take calls, again, just to reinforce it. I take calls all the time where people are involved in crashes, and the people that cause those crashes have no insurance or very small amounts. So if we can go to the next slide. To show the importance of what I've been saying and to put a little bit of substance behind my claims, we've got some statistics for you here from the year 2015. Shows the percentage of uninsured drivers out there on the highways. If you look at West Virginia, which is where I practice mostly, about a 10.1% chance that the folks who are driving around on our highways are uninsured. There are states that are higher than that. If you look at the state of Florida, again, these are projections, but it's based on real data that I believe it's 27% of the drivers on the highways have no insurance. And what that means is if they cause a crash, they have no way of compensating people that they injure. I would suggest that these numbers might even be a little higher than what you're seeing here. You look at the numbers as they are. If you're involved in a car crash in West Virginia, there's a 1 in 10 chance the person is uninsured. In Florida, there's about a 1 in 4 chance the person's uninsured. I would suggest that's actually a little higher because typically people who don't have insurance on their vehicles tend to be irresponsible. It tends to be the higher percentage of the drunk driving incidents that we see. People they go out. Unfortunately, they involve themselves in recreational drug use, excessive drinking, and next thing you know, they're involved in a car crash and they have no insurance. So it's a very real thing that happens. Go to the next slide, please, Justin. So the insurance I'm telling you about, what does it cover? What does it help you with? When you're involved in a car crash, there are certain amounts of damages that you might incur. First of all, medical expenses, and they start right away. From the very first time that a first responder comes to the scene and starts evaluating you, you're incurring medical bills. You will be billed by these ambulance companies. You will be billed by these fire departments. People, when they're taken to the emergency room, you get there. Car crash victims, a lot of times nobody really knows what's wrong with them until they start doing tests. They start running CAT scans, MRIs, X-rays. Costs on this care rack up pretty daggone quickly. And with yourself or family members in your vehicle, next thing you know, you could owe thousands and thousands of dollars in medical bills as a result of a crash. Also, there's a potential to lose income. We all work, hopefully. Those of us who do, we all know what would it be like not to have next month's income. I would suggest that for 99% of the world, you don't have next month's income, it's gonna be devastating. And that's not to mention what's going to happen potentially 6 months down the road with inability to go to work and provide for our families. Also, then we look a little further into potential extended periods of physical therapy, rehabilitation, and then also we might be talking about the need for future medical care. And just to kind of tie this up, we'd also need to talk about, unfortunately, as it happens, many times people are killed in car crashes. And when someone is unfortunately killed in a car crash, if they're a family's breadwinner, or one of the family's breadwinners, that goes away. The person may have a little life insurance. They may have a lot, hopefully, but person who goes out and is involved in a car crash, it can devastate those who remain. We're talking about the food on the table for your children. We're talking about their educations in the future. And even if we're talking about modest wage earners, $25,000 to $50,000 a year, if you look at a 20-year earnings window, you're talking $250,000 to $500,000 of income that a family might not have if one of its wage earners is killed in a car crash. We can go to the next slide. All right, so now I want to talk with you a little bit about case study, what underinsured motorist coverage is, what's available out there, and what it might cost. First of all, if you look at the slide on the left-hand side, that is an uninsured motorist coverage offer. That's what an insurance agent provides to its insureds when they first sign on to collect coverage. And if you look at this particular one, we have three sets of numbers across the column. The first number is bodily injury per person. The second column is bodily injury per accident. And the third, which we're not going to focus on, is property damage. The bodily injury per person is the amount of uninsured motorist coverage available to one person in that vehicle. The bodily injury per accident is the amount of uninsured motorist coverage available to all two or more occupants of the vehicle. So if a family of four is involved in a car crash with someone that's uninsured under this first offer, there would be $300,000 in coverage available to them. So if you skip down and see the optional offer of $25,000 and $50,000, that means if there's one person in the vehicle, there's $25,000 of uninsured coverage. If there are two or more, there's $50,000 in coverage. In other words, if there's a family of four in a car, there's $50,000 of coverage available to that family. Now, I want to focus on the cost of this insurance. If you look at the premium column, to obtain 100-300, this particular case study, and this is a real document. Obviously, the company and who it applies to is being redacted, but it's a real document and it's fairly certain or fairly recent. The premium for the $100,000, $300,000 coverage is $132 for a 6-month period. The premium suggested for the $2,550 is $89. So fairly simple. You can do the math. You're looking at about $43 difference between these two offers of coverage. What that means is for an extra $43 over a 6-month period of time, which comes down out to $6, $7, $8 a month if you pay your insurance on a monthly basis, for an extra $6 or $7 a month, a family of four can have an additional $250,000 of coverage in case they're involved in an unfortunate car crash as a result of someone's negligence who doesn't have insurance. If you look to the right-hand column of the slide, we'll talk about underinsured motorist coverage. Again, underinsured is when the person involved in the crash has maybe not enough insurance to compensate you for your losses. And it's important to kind of note here that most states or all states have mandatory insurance coverages that have to be in place, but the requirements for the amounts they're fairly low. West Virginia requires you to have 25,050 for your mandatory minimum limits. State of Florida, again, where the state of Florida has all these people running around that aren't insured, the state of Florida only requires $15,000 coverage and 30 for the $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident. Not a lot of insurance, folks. When you start talking about medical bills that pile up and things like that, there's just not a lot of money out there to compensate you for these losses. So we look to the underinsured motorist coverage that you can purchase to protect yourself and your family. This particular offer sheet, the 100-300, had a premium of $233. You can go back, Justin. Okay, yeah. The $25,000, $50,000 had a premium of $121. That comes to about $110, $120 over a 6-month period. Again, $120 over a 6-month period, which is about $20 a month. Family of 4 can have $250,000 more in insurance coverage if they spent that fairly modest amount. And folks, I am not an insurance agent. I do not sell insurance. I don't market insurance. I don't represent insurance companies. The point of my discussion with you here today is to show you that a modest amount of money invested into underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage can pay huge dividends for a family in case there's a unfortunate crash. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, Justin. This is a uninsured motorist offer that was given to a client of mine. I represented a lovely lady who was a professional person. She earned a very good income, and one snowy night, on her way about her business, and out of nowhere, through the median, comes a drunk driver and hits her square head on. Fortunately, she lived. Her vehicle and her seat belts really helped her, but it was a horrible collision. She was very lucky, but she did get hurt quite significantly. She had tremendous internal injuries. She had a closed head injury, which otherwise a concussion, and she had a fracture in her arm. This fracture became one of the most difficult things for her to deal with, and it ultimately was determined that she was going to need a future surgical procedure to fix her arm. And that was going to happen a year or two after this crash. Unfortunately, she missed a lot of work. She had medical bills that were huge. And her family was significantly impacted by this crash. Now, this was her uninsured motorist coverage offer sheet. If you look at this sheet, for the $25,000 in coverage, because there was only one person in the car, for the $25,000, the premium was $27.90 month period. If you look at the $1 million limits, that coverage costs $73.07. About $50. About $50 in the difference between $25,000 in coverage and $1 million of coverage. About $50 that separates you from this drunk driver who's uninsured, that gives you $975,000 more of protection. That costs you $50 extra over the course of a 6-month period. I would suggest that anybody who's employed can find an extra $50 over a 6-month period to provide yourself and your family with $975,000 more in insurance coverage. Now, fortunately, my client chose the $300,000 option, and it cost her $47.99, as indicated on the offer sheet. So, in the situation she was in, she could have spent another $25 over a 6-month period and had an additional $900,000 in coverage. And again, as I kind of touched on this earlier, it's kind of heartbreaking when you see this. She fortunately chose the $100,000, but we could have had much more success litigating this claim for her had she chosen that option. It was unfortunate, but that's part of the reason why I'm making this presentation to you today. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. This next slide comes from what's called an umbrella policy, a personal umbrella policy. Not really what our presentation is about today, but a personal umbrella policy covers you on top of your auto insurance and on top of your personal liability coverages that you may have either through homeowners or through renters insurance. This particular insured sought out and paid for an excess liability policy of $2 million. This is done by people who want to protect their assets. You know, if the unfortunate happens and you go out and cause a crash or you hurt someone, you can protect your assets from judgment by going out and getting a personal umbrella policy. And in this case, $2 million. Now, the price is fairly hefty on this particular policy, but what I wanted to show you through this slide, if you look at the top at the uninsured coverage, $147.94. So $147.94 gets you the $2 million in uninsured motorist coverage. $348.93, a little higher. Underinsured is typically higher. Gets you $2 million in underinsured motorist coverage. So we're looking at roughly $500 and some a year that this person has chosen to spend to help ensure that if the unfortunate happens, that there's something left for their family. And folks, I would suggest to you that a policy like this, it's pretty much life insurance. You're buying this type of coverage in case the unfortunate happens. Person's fatally injured, their spouse and families left behind. They're left without your wage earnings. It's important. It's important that the children have what they would have had their parent survived. Important down the road when kids want to go to proms and they want to go to college or seek technical training or anything like that. That's the purpose behind doing this, and frankly it costs you $500 a year. So, a very significant piece of insurance in this situation. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, key takeaways from this presentation. As simply as I can say it, one of the main messages I have for you is if you want to protect yourself through insurance, we all operate vehicles on the road. We all do it to get to and from work. We all do it to get to and from um, our recreational activities. The key takeaway is if you want to maximize your protection from an insurance perspective, you need to take the bull by the horns and go out and do it yourself. And you do that by purchasing as much underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage as you can. Like I said, it's kind of like life insurance. And oh, by the way, you don't have to give a blood sample. You don't have to have a physical. It doesn't go up when you get older. It's there for your purchasing. These large amounts, the $2 million policies, they can be fairly higher in cost. But as I've evidenced to you in these other slides, to get the more modest amounts, the million or the 100,000, the numbers can be really affordable compared to what you're already paying potentially for your auto policy. I would suggest that if you have questions about this, you call your insurance agent. Your insurance agent's there. Insurance agents exist in the world to sell you insurance. I'm certain that they would be willing to speak with you about it. If they're not, maybe you need to see another agent. I would also suggest that you educate yourself on your insurance coverages. Every 6 months or every year, you should receive what's called a declarations page, which indicates what premiums you owe and indicates what coverages you have. And I would also suggest that you study the financial cost to increase your coverage. And I'm not only suggesting that's not only suggesting that you talk to your agent or you figure out what the cost is. Sit down and look at your budget. Sit down and look at your income. Sit down and look at what you spend on certain things and see, hey, look, if I can go put $20 more on my auto insurance, where am I taking that from? Well, a family of four, if you take one night a month where you might eat out, and say we're not going to eat out tonight, we're going to go the less expensive route. We're going to cook, and right there you found that $20 for that month. So the key takeaways, I think we've covered them. Take the bull by the horns. You're the only one that can protect you and your family. The drunk drivers of the world are not going to be there to do that for you. I thank you so much for your time. I thank you for being here today. Again, if you want to submit any questions for review, send them to questions@baileyglasser.com. Justin, have we received any questions so far?
Yes, Sam. We actually have received two. The first one being, what can I do to learn more about my?
So, what can you do to learn more about your coverages? Well, you can like I said, you can contact your agent. You can talk to them. You can ask them the questions. You can ask them, hey, how much underinsured, uninsured do I have? What's available? What would it cost? And also, I work at a firm, Bailey and Glasser. I've been doing this for a long time. I've got experience in dealing with these types of issues. We have other lawyers here who practice in our personal injury group. We're capable of doing personal injury cases in multiple states. We're very experienced at reviewing these types of things. And personally, I would be happy to talk with you If you were to give me a call, my contact information will come up at the end of this slide deck. But the number is 304-345-6555. So yeah, those are the couple of things you could do. What's the next question, Justin?
So the other question is, so if I've been in an accident, what should I do to protect myself and my family?
That's a very important question. And the best way to answer that question, we need to begin with, well, how serious is the crash? I mean, if you've bumped into something or somebody has bumped into you, scratched your car, you had somebody open up your car and dinged your door. I mean, that's something typically you can probably work with your insurance company or work with the responsible party's insurance company and probably get to a fairly decent resolution for yourself in a fairly reasonable time period. If you're involved in a crash that has any physical injuries at all, or even the potential for physical injuries, I would suggest contacting a lawyer right away. Ask the questions of their lawyer. Let your lawyer talk with your insurance company. I would not give any statements to any insurance company until you've spoken to a lawyer. You might be laying in a hospital room with a broken leg. You might be under the influence of narcotic pain medication under prescription because you're laying in a hospital bed with a broken leg or just having had surgery or something of that nature. You need to let your lawyer handle that. You need to let your lawyer handle those questions in that situation. So, well, again, my contact information is up. Be glad to answer any questions you might have, and very much appreciate you attending today's webinar. And hopefully everyone walks away with a little bit of better understanding as to the importance of uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, and with a much better understanding as to how affordable it might be. Thank you so much.